Welcome to the Career Secrets Channel Experts Interview Series. I'm your host, Professor Edmund, introducing my very good friend, Raul Cortijo. Raul used to work for a huge multi-billion-dollar company. He was also a vice president of digital strategy for a technology company before he retired. I've known you for so long. I haven't looked at your LinkedIn profile, Raul, for a while. It was just so impressive. Raul and I have so much in common. We both like watching sports. You are a super Real Madrid fan, and I like Cristiano Ronaldo. You like to drink. I don't. Your photography is at a professional level, and I'm not. You don't usually like salesperson, and I'm one. I'm so picky with food, and you know that, and you are so kind that you let me pick all the restaurants every time. Raul used to be good looking when he was much younger, and I'm good looking, period. This picture down below, that picture is a mock-up of my book. Raul took that picture at Pebble Beach. It was a mock-up. I still like this one better, Raul.
It is better. But anyway.
Much better. Raul used to lead a sizable team and was in charge of my biggest customer ERP system. We did a lot of business together. By the way, Raul, you had a wonderful world-class team. Everyone was so kind and such a pleasure to work with, which speaks volumes about your leadership. Raul, thank you again for putting up with me.
You're welcome.
I still remember the first time we met your boss near the elevator in your office. He had a warm welcome for me. He said, "Don't F this up, Edmund." And I'm not joking. You probably still remember that.
Sounds like something I would say, but I can probably say that I said it with the most encouraging, in the most encouraging way.
I hope I didn't disappoint anybody.
No, you did very well. But as you know, being a software salesperson is not an easy job, right? And it was difficult for us to find somebody that worked with us well, and it's fine. It was hard to find somebody that was focused on customer success. And customer success defined by us, i.e., how well that the company is able to use the software they just bought, and not necessarily how much the company will actually buy in the future, right? So I think you had the right approach, and it really helped us.
Thank you. It was a great partnership, a great friendship afterwards as well. Thank you for that. So you have a very successful career in IT, and let's dive into your career path a little bit. Could you please talk about your career journey and how did you get into IT?
Okay, so I got into IT because essentially nobody else wanted to do it. It's always the truth. I think I started university as a scientist. I did my degrees in physics. I have a master's in physics, was doing a PhD. And while doing those grad studies, I figured that what I really liked was working with the computers in the lab. So, and I got a little bit smart. This is a long time ago. We're boomers. So talking back to the late 70s, early 80s. And I started liking, like I said, working with computers more. So I got another undergrad degree in computer science, right? So, and when the opportunities opened up, I jumped at it. I didn't wait for finishing the PhD. I was not really into it. I wanted to go out and do something useful. And I started as a process control engineer, and I call it engineer for now, in large steel industry. So we were automating the production lines, the GAB lines, the little met facilities, doing work that you couldn't buy at the time, because back then things were a little bit different than now. You have so many more tools available for you. You have architecture well defined. You have methodologies that are being perfected over the years. And back there, you just have to make it up as you went along, right? And I was very lucky that I always worked in large teams that were very accommodating, that had clear mandates from our bosses, and they let you do the work that you needed to do. right? So I was always grateful to be able to be on those pioneer times, I called it, where you had to really develop everything from scratch, right? So I worked at the steel mills for almost 10 years. And then um, it's a funny anecdote, but I'll tell that my wife at the time, and well, still wife, uh, she also got a job in the same company, but we were not working in the same project. So we would drive to work together. And but it got to the point where we would have to work together. And I said, no, dear, thank you. You can stay. I'll go do some other thing. So we never actually worked together in any project. So I moved on to another engineering company, and I was doing a lot of at the same kind of idea, process control automation for this time was traffic systems. And it worked out pretty well. And here's the big change in our career. We had our second kids, and I was traveling. I was the consultant. I was an independent, doing very well. But my dear wife said, we have two kids. You need to work somewhere close to where we are, or this is not going to work out. So anyway, so I got a job into a local company that was looking for a project manager for something. I didn't even know what it was, and it turns out to be IT, and it turned out to be an implementation of an ERP system. So I went from engineering to project manage and implementation of an ERP overnight.
Wow.
And from there, it's always been around IT applications, mainly the whole ecosystem of the ERP and all the applications that need to work together for the ERP to work, right? So, and that's how I started, because at the end, I couldn't find somebody that wanted to do the ERP implementation. It's always difficult. And I didn't know any better, and I was motivated to work locally. So,
Great story. Well, today everybody would just jump on an ERP implementation opportunity, wouldn't they?
it's it was it was it was a big change for me, but again, you have to be up to the individual. You have to be motivated to want it to do something. And if you're motivated, then it will work out, right? It didn't. It took a little bit to change my mindset, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But I did it, and I was somewhat successful. So
Excellent.
thankful.
You were very successful. Thousands of users. The projects got bigger and bigger, correct?
Always. Very demanding. As you know, ERPs implementations are not your typical development project. It's not your typical IT project or hardware infrastructure project. It's a little bit more complex because you're dealing with users, you're dealing with expectations, you're dealing with business process. So we need to know a little bit about all these things. And like we always say, the change management aspect of ERP implementation is the most important, right? So it's as the leader of those projects, right, it really changes your focus. Right?
On that note, how many years have you been a people manager?
Oh, I don't know, since 93, 93,
Long time.
long time. And even before 93, in the 80s, when we were in steel mills, I mean, I wasn't the manager, but we were working in fairly large teams, working very closely together. So collaboration and clear messaging is always very important.
Now, a fun question. You usually speak your mind. What was the biggest misunderstanding about Raul?
I don't know. I can tell you a little bit about that, because if you look at my career, I started working in very technical teams, right? Implementing algorithms that were not even developed at the time, where all my fellow workers were all engineers or computer scientists, right? All very technical. So when you have a technical team, all the issues are black and white. It's either right or it's wrong. There's no in between, right? So you kind of get used to that, because you always have to, in discussions where very direct and to the point, and you have to make your point and then move on to the next thing. So as you transition from a very technical black and white world to a ERP where you have to deal with a lot of users, and the thing about also ERPs is that your users become your customers at the end of the day. They're your ultimate customers, right? Because they come into the team to implement. They're the subject matter experts to work with you, and then eventually to go away, and they're the ones that are going to carry the banner of the implementation of the usage of the ERP. So and when you're dealing with users, nothing is black and white. It's always, many shades, and you have to be a lot more collaborative, and you have to be aware of their needs and why, people are set on their ways or why they want certain things. So that was a big change for me, admittedly, but I think I did okay. But I always say that, even to my kids now, that we all have a personality, right? And when things go wrong, you tend to default to your own personality. So you have to be very aware not to do that when you're dealing with people. And sometimes you fail, like everybody. So yeah, no, but anyway, that's how I look at it. I think I did okay overall.
You did really well.
Some of these implementations were very difficult. We had to deal with multinational, multicultural environments where what is would be accepted business practices in one community, one site would be totally different in another sites, right? So a lot of hard discussions were had. I don't want to get into the difficult ones because they're not all that important, because nobody remembers that. You
That's
should
why.
remember the good ones.
Okay, next question. This is all about team building and so on. What qualities did you look for when selecting team members? When you're hiring, what qualities were you looking for?
Okay, so it really it really depends on what you're hiring for, but I will talk about the things that we do have in common: the ERP, the the enterprise applications world. But what I look for is essentially two things. Is I want and of course it depends whether you're hiring a junior person or you're hiring an expert, right? So if you're hiring a junior person, only one is attitude, because you're going to be able to train them, right? And as you go through. When you hire an expert, you want some expertise, right? And to me, they're divided into two parts. You want the person to be confident and knowledgeable. You want it to be, self-sufficient, self-assured, even self-motivated, but even what I say, self-promoting, right? You want that person to be able to stand on its own, right? But the person is not going to be working alone, right? It's usually going to work in a large team with a lot of users. So you want the person to be see the big picture, be able to see the big picture, be collaborative, be a cheerleader many times, and be willing to give a hand on something that is not his job, right? Be able to get out of his comfort zone and help out. So there's two sides of it. There is the knowledge part and there's the fit part, right? And so I think we always interviewed for both parts, right? So even when you get an interview in the ERP world, you really have to poke at it to make sure that the person were knowledgeable. And usually that interview would be done by my teams, right? And the details, I mean, if you're looking for a financial expert in the implementation of our financial system, so you want to make sure that somebody knows what a trial balance is, or P&L, things like that. And it also depends on the modules. AP is different than AR, fixed assets, how complicated these things can get to. And then I would do the interview for fit, right? And mainly because in most companies that I worked for, we didn't have the ability to take our time, right? Deadlines were always very important. You're spending a lot of money on an implementation. The deadline, the scope is not always set in stone. It tends to be very, flexible as you go along, even though the ERP tells you what you have to do. But then the expectation from the users will be different, right? So that expectation from the users, especially if it comes from a manual system or a different system, changes over time. So you have to manage those expectations, right? So if a person is very set on their own way and not be able to adapt, it wouldn't be able to fit into our team. So the interview for fit is something that's very important.
Excellent. So what was the best and worst performance you have seen from candidates in an interview?
Okay, I'll tell you a story about somebody that I hired many, many years ago before I knew you. I was still director of enterprise applications. I was called with my boss to go interview this lady, and it was for the admin person, right? For everybody. He was the CIO. We were the directors. So it was about two or three. So we're interviewing this lady, and she was so overqualified to be an admin. New immigrant to Canada, worked in many projects before, but she was just looking for a job. And I picked after the interview, I picked my boss to the side, like, this is not the right fit for you. This is the right fit for me. I'll take her. You can go find a different admin. But this lady is, so right for for the type of things that we do. And of course, I did end up hiring her, right? So because sometimes when you come to new country, you don't know what to expect. You're just trying to get a job, right? So and not only did she work for me at that company, then I brought her with me to another company, and then she went back to her original country for family matters, right? But she was very good, and it came through. It's like, okay, no worries, I'll take care of you. You're gonna work for me, right?
Wow, great story. What role did you hire her for?
So it was just like a project manager for implementation of applications, enterprise applications.
Wow, great story. Great story. What was the worst lie you've ever heard?
Well, this is what I was mentioning a little bit a few minutes ago, that when you get a resume for ERP implementations, you really need to be careful, because the implementations tend to be done in a large team. I mean, in large teams, I mean, multi-discipline teams. There would be a financial team. It could be a supply chain. It could be projects. Lots of people involved, and then even within the different disciplines or areas, there could be a junior person, could be a senior person working on it. And the tendency is that if you were involved in an implementation of AR, even though you were not the lead, you've done an implementation of AR, for example, right? So you need to really understand that, or interview that, has this person really implemented AR or was involved in an implementation of AR in some other role? And we saw that a lot, unfortunately, right? So, and that's the interview for technical fit. And when I mean technical in an ERP implementation, it's really subject matter expert. You're not talking about programming,
Functional.
right? Function. So there was, a little, I would say, liberties taken with the resumes.
Got it. Thank you. The next one is on career moves. What have been some of the most impactful career moves you've seen over the years?
I know there was, I had one boss that went from being my boss to working for being the CIO to another company, large company, uh, out of a dispute. Out of a dispute, because we had this software that wasn't working, wasn't really doing the what we wanted to do. Was very difficult. It was sold for something that was more mature than it really was, right? So we had to escalate it to their CEO, and that started a relationship between my old boss and the CEO of that company that led him to say, well, come work for us. So you never know when a career opportunity is going to come out of the worst possible situation, where you're like, having a pretty big dispute about, something that is not working well, not going well, to flip that over, to take it, to make it something positive. That was pretty impressive. And of course, he deserved everything that he did.
Wow. Wow. In your opinion, should an engineer become a project manager?
Well,
Why not?
I wouldn't say just engineers. It just happened that I'm also an engineer. I had to, when I was working at the steel mills, a lot of my coworkers were engineers, and out of a silly bet with one of my friends, I said I can become an engineer, even though I was not. I was a physicist and a computer scientist. So I wrote the exams and I became a PNG. So I always now, because I think PNG is a nicer professional title, right? So anyway, so I did become an engineer, so I can speak for engineers. But I think what's important is not just an engineer, is to be a subject matter expert. Does a subject matter expert, or let me flip that. Does a project manager need to be a subject matter expert? And the answer is no, but I prefer that. Because you can have, and I've seen that, and I even use some project managers that are just experts at being able to manage tasks, getting people engaged, getting their the deliverables on time. They're working through a Gantt chart, right? But it really does help if when you look at the Gantt chart, you just don't see just the tasks, but you understand what each of the tasks are and the difficulties that may be involved in the task. Right? So that when somebody says, well, I couldn't do this because I had some other dependencies that may or may not be on the Gantt chart that came up, right? And you can say, well, that's not correct because I don't believe you, or there's something that you should do something and be able to do about it. Or you can say, yeah, I understand it, and let me try to help you, right? Because like a good PM or a good leader or manager, you need to be able to help the person doing the work, right? By removing obstacles. And sometimes the PMs don't do that. They expect some the management to do it, but sometimes I think you need to be able to explain in detail why something is not working without having to bring the person out of their job and take more time to explain why not it's working versus working on what's really is important, right? So I think personally, yes, I have always hired PMs that were at least aware of the subject matter that we were trying to implement. I thought it was part of the secret sauce of my success, right? To be able to do that.
Excellent. This is again on career. If you had the chance to start over, what job roles or specialization would you be inclined to explore?
I started over a few times, right? And I adapted. Right? Um, when I went to university, I took science and math and science because I was good at that. I was very naive. I was the first person in my family to go to university, so I had no help from family, no advice there. So I had to follow like kind of like a path of least resistance. This is good, I'm doing good, but maybe I want to go do something else, right? And I did that, right? So even the engineering part, the IT part, project management, architecture. I have no regrets. I love what I did every step of the way. Um, if I could have taken a more applied degree in university, like engineering to begin with, because at the end of the day, what I liked about my career is that I was able to apply science or scientific principles to even business problems, right? And I think what a university teaches you is how to problem solve, right? And the ability, and especially science or engineering, where you may end up with a really big problem, and the ability to break it down and solve those individual chunks is very important. And that applies to business, applies to everything, right? So no regrets. I wouldn't do anything different.
Good. Excellent. On work-life balance, balancing a demanding career and personal life can be challenging. How much work did you take home, and how did you strike that balance?
I mean, I would like to say that none, but that would not be true. But just enough. My challenge was not so much the work that I took home, but the time that I was not home. Meaning both at a lot of the companies that I worked with, even when I was at the very beginning, as a contractor consultant, I was traveling, so I was away from home, right? And it's like, so sometimes you're not home, and invariably when I was not home, something important happened around the house that I would get the phone call. You're like, oh, what do I do now? Our cat died. What do I do? It's like, okay, well, call the neighbors and he can put the poor cat in a bag and take it away if you don't want to do it. So many, like my wife would say that I did it on purpose because whenever I was away, something happened always. And I can
I
mention
remember that conversation, bro.
and and as I mentioned before, when we had our second kids and we had two little kids in daycare, I couldn't travel, right? So, and that's the different thing. So I was lucky enough to have very good teams, clear mandate, good teams. I could rely on them. We were very focused on delivery, right? And we would have many projects, and we did okay. So there was always sticky points, and where you have to think about what you're doing at home, strategies. We also were dealing with companies in India, for example, or on the other side of the world. So you would have phone calls in the middle of the night. But that's not an inconvenience. That is just part of the job, right? So it's what you make it. Both of us worked, so we knew what it took to have a good career, and the kids they're good, accommodating. On the other side, the positive side is that sometimes I would bring the family to work, right? So if I had to travel to South America, for example, my wife and my kids would then take some vacation, and they would be, on vacation, knowing the countries that we were on while I was working. And of course, we paid for that, right? So you have to be flexible and look at the positives, right? So my kids saw so many parts of the world while growing up, only because I was seeing a lot of parts of the world while they were growing up. So no regrets. You can't, there are days where you have to take the work home, but if you constantly have to take the work home, it means that you're not doing something correct, right? So if you really need to then evaluate, why is this project so difficult to get done? What can I do differently? So to me, it's more of a symptom that I need to do something different.
Excellent. That's very wise. Now on the popular topic, AI in careers. So I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you have 24 certifications. Machine learning and big data, data science in real life, executive data science capstone, building a data science team. It's so impressive. Did you even remember how many of these guys?
I have no idea. Because I take these, I take these for my own interest, right? So a few years back, big data was a big deal, right? Oh, big data is a big thing, right? Now it's AI, but a few years back, if you remember, big data was the latest thing that is going to solve everybody's problem, right? So, and then there was cryptocurrencies, right? So I also have some certification of Bitcoin, blockchains, and because how can you comment about something if you don't actually understand it, right? So I would just go in and find some courses, not just read the internet, somebody that's willing to teach it and go through and learn it. I mean, those certificates are from places like Coursera or Udemy. They're not expensive. They're not the most rigorous courses. There are some, you can get a master's, I think, now out of
Wow.
Coursera. But they're very good at learning what is something, how to do something, right? Or what is this about in more detail. I mean, that's what I was always looking for.
Yeah. So there are more than 4,000 AI courses in Coursera alone. And I saw some of yours was actually from Stanford.
Let me put it this way. There's two. I look at AI as two parts, right? AI is going to be an excellent tool that you can use. The user can, and they're really the companies developing OpenAI, developing these AIs. These companies are really developing these tools so that it can be used by the masses, by people that really don't need to understand how the algorithm works, right? So there are a lot of efforts being done, and that's where a lot of the controversy comes in, because how do you know how this AI has been taught? Because AI has to be taught, right? So I'll get into that a little bit later. But so as a tool, AI would be fantastic to anybody, right? Whether you're in business, whether you're in IT, whether it doesn't matter. It's somebody that it's not going to do the work for you, but you can go in and kind of like a whiteboard. Like we used to do that with other colleagues. But if you don't have somebody, you can, go to AI, say, okay, this is what I want to do, get some ideas. The better your prompting, the better ideas you're going to get. So there's a whole skill set on just using AI. But I see that as getting better and better all the time. And anybody being able to use it. I mean, there's one of the big strengths of AI right now is the ability to even write programs, right? So But it's not AI is not going to. Well, sometimes it writes a little application for you, right? So I think that's where the future is going to be. Is it's an assistant for people. Will it replace people? Not for a while, right? Not for a long time. The other parts of AI, the things that I'm interested in, is how does AI work? How do you teach an AI? What are the algorithms? What techniques are they using? Why is why are these AIs biased? How are they? So all this know-how, right? And that's difficult. Now you're not just using it as a tool, but you're looking at, you're opening the hood and now you're looking at it as a mechanic, right? Can I do something with this? How does it work, right? Um, and that's, requires a little bit more knowledge, right? And I took the first course I took, and I'd recommend to everybody to take is the machine learning out of Stanford University by Professor Andrew Ng. And to really understand, go through the principle, the basic algorithms of machine learning, which is the basic building blocks of AI, right? And it's not really initiated. The math is difficult. Your mindset is different. If you're like a linear programmer, you're not going to do well, because this is all about, do everything in parallel, like, big data, everything. The more parallel operations you can do with your data, with your features on the faster it's going to be, the better it's going to be. And that requires a slightly mindset. It helped me to have a physics background because I had some of the math, but yeah, it was very interesting. I love math course.
So what you're saying, Raul, is if I were to become a data scientist, it would take a lot.
I'm not saying that, and you can do anything, but you have to be able to change. And data science is different than AI, right? So data science is it's a different bowl of fish, or whatever, kettle of fish, right? It's different. And I think there is probably less technical knowledge required in data science than AI, machine learning. And I'm just meaning the deep underlying science of it, right? So, but you can do both. Anybody can do both. It just requires a lot of dedication, and I would think, a lot of courses to be a true specialist or work for a company that's doing this kind of stuff, right? Now, I think if you ask me where this is all going, what are the things that interest me now is quantum computing, right? So having quantum computing was coming up to the point where people started to talk about it. And then I would say the AI revolution came about, right? So that quantum computer is not going away. And what I think the application of quantum computing to AI will be the next big thing. I'm predicting, right? Because now quantum computing allows you to do everything faster, quicker, at speed changes that are mind-boggling, right? So you apply that to learning algorithms of AI, and it's a little scary. But yeah, but for the people that are looking for a career, AI is going to be a tool you need to understand and be able to use properly. It's not going to do your job yet, but it's going to help you a lot. And if you're able to leverage that, you will have an advantage over somebody that doesn't have it.
Excellent. Final thoughts. Do you have any other advice that you want to provide to the career-minded?
Well, not to be consumed with your career. And is career, it's a question for you. I don't know. Is career just making money, or is career having a satisfying life, right? Because if you just want to make money, go be a trader in the Wall Street, right? I don't know. I always did. I was lucky enough to be able to do a job that I really enjoyed doing, and by having that enjoyment and working with great people along the way, I was also very lucky to have very good teammates. Whether it's people that work for me, people that I work with, all my bosses were fantastic. I never had a problem. So to me, in my perspective, having a good career was having a job that I really, really enjoy. Right? So I think that's the most important part that I can give to anybody. Yeah, money, title, to me are important, but perhaps secondary. The most important is that are you enjoying what you're doing? Right? Do you get up every morning, going to work? It's not a burden. And I think at the end of the day, family and quality of life is the most important. Right? So if you can balance those two, which is obviously not easy, you'll do well. Right? But it's easily for me to say as a boomer at the end of my career than somebody that's starting and trying to save money for a down payment for a house, right? So two different things, right?
That
But
is so deep. That's wise, bro. I agree with you. It's probably the best thing that can happen. And it actually happened to both of us. So we enjoy our work, we make some money, some good money, and then things were really good. I know that for the people who are struggling, it would be a slightly different scenario. But that is wise, and I really appreciate you spending time. I have to thank you for everything, Raul. Thank you for being a good partner and a good friend.
there we go. Thank you. I can say that a lot of people I work for or with have become my friends. That's rare. So I'm lucky to have you as a friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Until next time,
Cheers.
Professor Edmund.
Take care.
And that's your career secrets.